passion can actually be inherent and it can actually be grown. Then how do you turn your passion into value? Find the problems that particular passion of yours actually solves. Then identify who you are as a person and where you're going to, and the problems that you can actually solve, which now makes it potential value points for you. In turning it into a business, you first have to identify that being a creator and a business person is not the same thing. For you to actually make it as a business, you have to operate not based on feelings, but based off of measurable data. How to position yourself to make profit, marketing, understanding your customers, placing yourself in a visible position through advertising, understanding your competitors, understanding your market research. So if you do all of these things, you discover that you have fully turned your passion to value, and this value into a business, for that business to generate profit. We are going to be discussing the topic, turning your passion into profit, the business of creative arts. So basically, if you actually ask a lot of creatives, that is, if you ask photographers, videographers, graphics designers, all of these people, artists, if you ask them, why did you go into the creative industry, they will tell you that it's because of their passion. In fact, if I ask you now, you say, oh, I have so much passion for media, I have so much passion for fashion, I have so much passion for art and all of those other stuff, which is totally good. In fact, it's a good thing to have, because without passion, you cannot actually reach a certain level in the creative industry, because you discover that the creative industry comes with its challenges, where you have to meet up with certain demands, where you have to keep learning. And the learning process is always not easy. In fact, for the most part, it is somewhat uncomfortable. Sometimes it is very challenging to learn, because you're trying to learn something. In fact, you're practicing and you're seeing that that thing is not yielding results. You're seeing that it's not working out. Take, for instance, when I newly got into photography and I was starting to learn lighting and other parts of photography, it was quite challenging, because I'll see a particular video on YouTube and then I'll try to replicate that, and then the results that I was getting was not the same with what I was seeing on the YouTube video. So that was for the longest time, that was very frustrating. And the reason why that was frustrating was that I was trying to figure out, okay, what was I doing wrong? What was the thing that I was doing wrong? What were the things I'm doing right? Do you understand? What were the things that was my gear not up to the standard of the one I saw in the video that I was trying to replicate? All of those questions, they were just there. And trust me, I did not get all the answers to my question, but through all the hurdles of and all the challenges that I faced learning, one of the things that I would say is that it kind of shaped me into who I am today. Do you understand? So it shaped me into the person I am, the creative that I am today. So if you look at my work, you discover that most of those videos and those failed projects that I tried to replicate, you discover that it was from those failed projects that I now evolved to have this particular style that I have today. Do you understand? And the beautiful thing about the creative industry is that you always keep evolving. You never stop evolving. In fact, if you stop growing in the creative industry, you just phase out after a while. Because with the changes in the whole world and how fast time is moving, you discover that if you're not evolving with the times, in a year or two, you're already lost in the shadows. One thing that helped me out of that particular experience is my passion. So the fact that I have so much passion for photography, videography, and creative arts in general, I was able to just push through those challenges, no matter how hard they were, no matter how hard the challenges were. I was able to push through. I was able to push through them. And now, looking at it in retrospect, if I did not have the passion I had, maybe I would have stopped photography as of now, because it's not very easy for you to continue doing what you're doing and stay at it even when it's not working. That's why you discover that some people go to school and then they drop out. It's not exactly because they wish to drop out, but it's just because there's nothing to keep them going. Do you understand? You discover that these people, some people even looked at their life and then they saw that I can be successful without school. You understand? Some people looked at their life that, okay, the time I'm spending here that is actually not working, that I'm actually failing at this particular course I'm studying, I can apply it into doing some other thing. And some people through that route, they became successful. Some people through that route, they actually failed even more. basically what we're going to be talking about is turning your passion into profit. Now we know you have that passion to actually make videos, to take pictures, to make designs, to actually style clothes, to be a makeup artist, any part of the creative arts. You have all of those passions, but then those passions automatically will not turn to profit. So there's one thing I heard from someone I really respect, and the person was like, your passion, no one actually cares about your passion. So a lot of people actually go into businesses because they say, okay, I love this particular business, I love this particular thing, but in the grand scheme of things, no one cares about you. Do you understand? All people care is the value that you can give. And if you're not able to position your passion, which is the creative arts now, in a way that you can give value to people, you would not get compensated. Do you understand? You discover that you continue working and working and working, and you're working on your passion, and only you love it. Maybe you and your family members, maybe not even all your family members. Do you understand? So if you think about it very well, you have to bring yourself to a particular point where you tell yourself that this passion of mine, it has to turn into value, then value into money. So that is the ladder of how it works. So if I actually have a passion, first of all, this passion is good, it satisfies me, I feel fulfilled doing this, but then your fulfillment doesn't actually affect me. Your fulfillment doesn't profit me, it doesn't profit the general audience, it doesn't profit the general public. Do you understand? It actually profits you, it makes your life better, it makes you happier, but then it doesn't make other people happier. Even if it makes other people happier, maybe there might be a limit, maybe because they care about you or something. But then for you to actually make your passion into a business, you actually have to turn that passion into value, and then from that value, you then derive monetary compensation or compensation in general. So if you look at the creative arts, you discover that a lot of people actually have been doing this for years, and you discover that the creative industry, if I'm not mistaken, has a very high percentage of talented people that are not adequately compensated. The creative industry has a high level of people who are very talented, but then they don't derive or they don't get so much compensation for the value that they have. And this is because people have not learned the way or the act of turning their passion into profit. So they leave their passion as passions, and then they do these things. In fact, they even have some audience. So some creatives even have some audience that would pay for, that would love their work and all of those things. But then I hope you know that there's a difference between somebody loving your work and knowing or wanting to pay for that particular work that you do. Because some people may just love your work. How many of you have seen that situation where you actually love something that somebody does, but you know you can never pay for this thing? Have you ever noticed it? Take for instance, okay, for me, I'll use myself now as an example. I look at people who do massages, and then I feel like that is actually a creative way to make money. Like, you actually understand the human body, to know where all, is it pulses now? To know where all your, what is it called? Yes, I don't know too. That's to show you that I actually don't know. So to show you like how much they understand the human body and how much they can actually make the human body feel good through touching and massaging and all of those things. Do you understand? To relax the muscles and all. So I really look at all of those things and I really like them from afar. Do you understand? And this is not to sound condescending to masseurs or people who are massage therapists. This is a personal opinion for me. So I don't think I actually would pay for one, because it's just a personal preference. The idea of it is nice, actually, that you're feeling a certain, or maybe you're feeling pain in a part of your body and you have to like go to get relaxed and all of those things. It's all fine. I love the idea. In fact, for people who have monetized, I think like it's a great idea. Do you understand? It's actually a good business idea. But then for me, I cannot actually patronize that particular thing because it is not my thing. So I love it, but I can't patronize it, or I can't see myself spending money on that. Do you understand? And no matter how much, or even if it's free, I don't think it's worth it for me. But then you would see the next person just standing by my side, that all they can think about when they go for a holiday is just to go and see a massage therapist, to see a masseuse or someone that does massages. Do you understand what I'm saying? One thing you should understand is that the fact that people actually love your work The fact that people actually give you accolades, the fact that people actually just say, oh, your work looks nice, this video, oh my god, it looks so good, it's so clean, it doesn't mean that people are actually going to pay you money for that particular passion of yours or that particular value that you have. So you have to figure out a way to turn the passion into value first, and then turn that value into money. Do you understand what I'm saying? Now, in this model, one thing you should first understand is that passion can be inherent. Do you understand? So you can just have passion inherently. That is something that just comes natural to you. It's just there. Do you understand my point? Like some people, you just discover that some people are very good at some things that they don't even try so much, like they don't try so hard at. And we're happy for people who have that. But then passion can also be grown. You can also grow passion. Do you understand my point? Because a lot of people actually feel like some people are born with creative arts. Some people feel like you have to be born with a certain kind of passion for something for you to do it. I don't actually subscribe to that, because you may start out something not having passion for that thing, but in your doing that particular thing, you will discover that after a while, you will grow the passion. So it's more or less like a seed that grows. Do you understand? How many people have started something that they did not actually like, but then after a while, you found out that you actually like this thing? So growing up, I never liked playing football. And this was because like I did not like to have any injury. Do you understand? But after a while, like I was like, when I was in like junior secondary school, and I had friends that really liked football, so I started playing football. Do you understand my point? So after a while, I discovered that I was just overly enthusiastic about football. I really loved football, and it was I think I held on to that passion till afterwards. Other passions now took that over. But then if I had continued, that passion would have grown even more. Was I born with it? No. Did it come natural to me? No. But the fact that I was able to tell myself that this thing, I want to do it. And as at the time when I was starting because of peer pressure. But then after a while, I saw myself, I started developing passion for this thing. So it's possible for you to actually start a particular field or in the creative industry. That is, maybe you go into photography, videography, and you don't exactly feel so much passion, or you don't have so much passion for that particular field. But after a while, and if you keep doing what you're doing, you discover that after a while, you would grow that passion. I mean, it's not the same for everybody, because after a while, some people might get frustrated for the lack of passion and then they may leave. But then if for a few people, it's actually true that they can actually develop passion and love for that particular creative field. Do you understand? So now, if you have this passion inherent in you, or you actually grow this passion, now that is totally fine. So you have this, it's inherent, or it's grown. It has grown in you. So now the next step is actually to turn that passion into value. And what do I mean by turn the passion into value? What I mean by that is that you have to bring yourself to a place where you actually realize that that passion will stay a passion if you don't actually look for a value to actually attach to that passion. And what do I mean by this statement that I just made? For something to be of value, that thing has to actually be a problem solver. So for something to actually have value, that thing actually has to solve the problem of somebody. The biggest misconception in the creative industry is that once I have this passion, somehow, somewhere, somebody is just going to figure out that this passion of mine is actually going to solve their problem and they are going to pay me for it. But then that will have you waiting in line for a very long time. Do you understand? It will have you waiting for a very, very long time. But instead of that, one thing that you should actually tell yourself is that instead of me to actually wait for people to actually recognize that my passion solves their problem, what I can do for myself to put myself ahead and to abbreviate time for myself is to actually make sure that I turn that passion into value. Now, how do you do this now? The primary way that you actually turn your passion into value is to first identify the problem or the potential problems that passion of yours would solve. So now, if you are a makeup artist, what is one problem, or what are the problems that your passion can actually solve? So you have this passion for making people up, but what is that problem that your passion can actually solve for people? And if for a makeup artist, some of the problems are some people actually don't feel good about the way they look. So that is actually a problem that you can solve. Some people actually have low self-esteem because of their facial features. Some people actually want to look a certain way. So, do you understand? They need to appear in a certain way or in a certain light. That is a problem you can solve. Another problem that you can solve is that for people that actually want to be makeup artists, they need products. There's no way that you can have makeup done with just your bare hands. You actually need products. For people that actually want to look better, not only with products but also to have a clear skin, they actually need good skincare products. For people that actually want to make movies and all of these things, they actually want like some blemishes in the face of like the cast and the crew to actually not be there. That is a problem you're solving. So if you identify these different problems, you will discover that you have fully identified the areas of problem that are potential value points for you, for your passion. So for that passion that you have now, what you're doing now is that you are now looking for the problems within all of this. And these are just few problems that I just enumerated. Do you understand? So out of these problems, you are now looking for the one that your passion can actually solve. When you now look for the one that your passion can actually solve, because makeup, if you have passion for makeup, that passion for makeup can actually solve all of these problems. Do you understand? It is now at that point that you now look at yourself, that is your personality, for who I am and for where I'm going. Which of these problems actually aligns to who I am and where I'm going? Which of these problems can my personality best solve? Or can my person best solve? Which of these problems best aligns to where I see myself in the future? So that is you identifying the potential problems which are value points for your passion. Do we understand? Now, take for instance, if you're a photographer, some of the problems that you can actually solve is, number one, some people don't feel good about themselves. So you can actually make them feel good about themselves by taking really good pictures of them. Do you understand? Some people actually want their face to be edited. Do you understand? Because they don't like some blemishes on their face. So that now opens the door. That's the way you now have like people who are photo retouchers, photo editors and all of those things. Do you understand? The people that want to take the pictures, they need a camera. They need lenses, they need accessories, they need all of these things. For people who are in need of a studio space to actually take pictures, they need a studio to actually take these pictures. Maybe they don't have the money to actually get a studio space, so they need a studio space. So in identifying all of these things, you will understand that these problems, these are potential value points that you can identify, that your passion can actually feed, or that your passion can actually solve. So if you then understand this, you will know that there is absolutely no creative or no field in the creative industry that is actually useless or that doesn't have value to offer. Take for instance, for people who are artists, people who draw, people who paint, you discover some people generally just love the aesthetics of arts around the house. Some people are art lovers, some people are art collectors. Who is going to solve all of their problems? Do you understand? In fact, some people would rather go for a painted image of themselves rather than a photographed image of themselves. So you will discover that if you look at it very well, you discover that after identifying all of these things, like there are so much problems that is there to be solved, and you can't even possibly solve all of the problems. So that's why you hear people in the creative industry, they'll say something like the creative industry is so saturated and all of those things. And I wonder how you are seeing the creative industry has been so saturated. In fact, what I even feel is that the creative industry has not been tapped into fully yet. I feel like there are still problems that needs to be solved, and nobody is looking at those problems. Now, do you know the problem? The problem is everyone wants to solve the problem that other people are solving. You don't want to identify a new problem to solve, so that is now a value point for your passion. But all you just want to do is you want to take the easier route. You understand? Instead of thinking, ideating, and figuring out a new value point or a new problem to solve, which is a value point for your passion. No, you don't want to do that. You actually are just looking at somebody that is already solving a problem and you want to solve that problem. Now, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, you and Mr. A and Mr. B can actually identify the same problem and solve them. Do we agree? But the truth of the matter now is that, do you think that you would have an edge over someone that has been solving a problem and has experience of over 20 years? do you think you would be better able to solve that problem, like, or you'd solve that problem faster than that person? With the required amount of knowledge, maybe yes. But the truth of it is that if you actually want to stand out and if you actually want to monetize what you're doing, you have to look for a problem that needs to be solved, and you have to solve that problem. So what we find out, especially in the creative industry, everybody wants to be a certain kind of makeup artist. Everybody wants to be a certain kind of photographer. I always ask myself, in Nigeria, is there anyone that is, or do you know any renowned photographers that actually are wildlife photographers? We are in Africa, which is like the home of wildlife, and I feel like there's even a very low percentage of wildlife photographers. So no one is actually looking at that. Everyone just wants to be a portrait photographer, wedding photographer, and there's absolutely nothing wrong. If that is your passion, that is okay. There are a lot of problems that need to be solved, and many people, or many of us, are actually overlooking those problems. You discover that everybody wants to actually be the same type of photographer. Now, if you look at it now, every fashion designer actually wants to be the same fashion designer. That is a problem. Because if everybody is the same, who is going to give us that variety? Do you understand? If everybody is the same, who is now going to solve the problems of others? So if you now want to make dresses like maybe Vicky James, you want to make dresses like Prudential, who is now going to make dresses or outfits for people who don't fit into that category? Do you understand what I'm saying? There's a huge gap in the creative industry where people actually feel like there's only a particular way or a particular direction that everybody should go towards. And now what you find out is that everybody is actually seeking or trying to be the same person and service the same kind of clients. We're actually leaving a lot of money on the table. Do you understand? We're leaving clients that need to be served. And then, in fact, the society as it is right now is even conditioning the minds of people to want the same thing. So this is me that doesn't want a Vicky James dress. I don't want a Prudential dress. But then, because that is what like 90 to 95% of everyone in the creative industry makes, I am now constrained to making that particular dress. And then, or instead of having it like this, where Vicky James is doing amazing at what she's doing, Prudential is doing amazing at what she's doing. Do you understand? We have, who else does boo-boo? I think Vladini also does boo-boo. Who else does boo-boo? I think TJD does boo-boo. Do you understand? Like, I think there are other people who do like other types of outfits. You discover that these people are also, they're solving problems. Now, one of the biggest lessons I've learned in life, and I've learned this from some of my mentors, is that where you find the most problem is where the highest potential of making money is. So if you discover that there's a whole lot of problem in a particular place, that is where there's a huge potential. Do you understand my point? So now, if you look at it this way, in Africa, we always talk about the problems. There are so many problems in Africa that we always talk about, we always sing about it every day. But the truth of the matter is that if you actually look at it very well, these problems are a pathway to actually producing value. So if you actually don't identify those problems as potential value points that you can use your passion to feed, or to use your passion to actually solve those problems, you will discover that you are drawing yourself back, and all you're doing is just joining the bandwagon of people who are complaining about problems, instead of seeing the possibilities that are inherent in that problem. Do you understand my point? So now, the first thing I said is, first of all, identify, do you have passion for the creative industry or the creative field where you are? Is it inherent, or do you have to grow it? Now, the next point is, how do you now turn that passion into value? So now, in turning that passion into value, what was the thing I said? I said you actually have to look for the possible problems that your passion solves, which is now potential value points that your passion can actually feed. Do you understand my point? And then, after you identify these problems, what's the next thing I said? I said, you should actually look at your personality and look at where you are going to, in comparison with the problems that you have identified. Which of these problems can your personality and your future best solve? That is, who you are going to be in the future, where you want to be in the future, who you currently are. Which of these problems can you best solve with all of these parameters? So if you identify that, then you have now transitioned yourself from just being someone with a passion to someone that has value. And when you're done identifying the particular problems or value points that your passion can actually feed, what is now the next step? The next step is now to monetize. The next step is now turning that passion, which has turned into value, into profit. So now, what you discover now in the creative industry is that some people have actually discovered the problems that they want to solve. But the truth about it is that many creative people have not actually understood that you identifying your passion and knowing that you have a passion and identifying the value in your passion does not exactly translate into profit. You actually have to bring yourself to a point of realization that this value has to be turned into a business for that business to generate profits. You would actually discover that a lot of creatives feel like because they have identified the possible problems which have now become value points for their passion, that automatically that equates into money. But it doesn't equate into money. So one of the key things that you should actually tell yourself is that for something to actually make money, it has to be a business. But what we have in the creative industry is that a lot of creatives are trying to make money as creatives and they are not trying to build a business. If you look at the definition of a business, you'll discover that a business is an enterprise that engages in the exchange of goods, services for monetary value. Do you understand? Or two entities that engage in economic exchange of value. Do you understand my point? So if you look at it, the key word there in that definition of a business, two or more entity, and then economic value. So that's why you discover that a lot of creatives, there's actually problem in the creative industry where creatives will say they were actually paid to do a particular project, but they were paid with publicity. Do you understand my point? And don't get me wrong, publicity is also value. You're also getting value in some sense. But then when we are talking about a business, majorly what we are talking about is economic value. When I mean economic value, I mean monetary value. So if you're not able to bring yourself to that point where you understand that for your passion, which you have now discovered the value in that passion, to make profit, it has to be a business. And the reason a lot of creatives struggle is that they try to make money off of their passion as a creative. Do you understand? Instead of being a business owner. Now, I'm going to tell you the difference between the two. Typically, what you would actually see is that most creatives, they price their service or their products on the basis of how they feel or what they perceive their value to be. Do you understand my point? There's no market, there's no measuring of your costs or the cost of you delivering that service. Do you understand? There's no measure of the cost of knowledge that you require to actually give that service and that you need to build on to continue to give that service. So what you find out is that you have people who are actually creatives that I feel like I should charge these amounts. Do you understand? You hear creatives like say something like, I think this is how much I should charge. I feel like. But then one of the things that you should know as a creative is that you don't actually place monetary value on, or you don't actually place a monetary value on your passion just based off of feelings, or just because you feel like or you perceive your value to be a certain level. Now hear me out. So what if I perceive my value to be a certain level and other people don't perceive my value to be at that level? What would be the end product of that? You will discover that people would not patronize me because they don't perceive the value or they don't see that particular value that I see in myself. So one of the things that you actually have to do, and this is on the business aspect now, you actually have to bring yourself to a point where you actually tell yourself that I can't run a business based off of feelings. A business is actually run by data, by numbers, not by feelings. Do you understand? So if I want to go into business as a creative or as a creator, I actually have to learn about business. I have to grow my skill as a businessman. And I have to tell myself that being a creator and being a businessman, they are two different things. If you can understand this, you have solved a whole lot of problems for yourself as a creative. In fact, you have solved one of the major problems in the creative industry. You will discover that a lot of people actually feel like they should charge in a certain way. And my question is, based on what parameters? Based on what numbers? What have you calculated? Which research have you done to understand the people's perception of your value? Do you understand? If you've not done any of this, you cannot call yourself a businessman, because all you're doing is that you're just making money here and there, wherever you are lucky and wherever somebody feels or perceives the same value you see in yourself. And do you know that that has been one of the leading causes of creatives being underpaid in the creative industry? Because there's no measure. We're not able to measure the level of knowledge that we have. Take for instance, I'm a photographer and I went for a course, and that course actually cost me like $2,000 to actually go for that particular course. As at the beginning of that course, I had a certain value. As at the end of that course, my value is not the same as at the beginning of that course. Do you understand what I'm saying? So you actually have to have parameters in place, not just based off of feelings. So that when you are actually running a business, you're not just telling them that, okay, if they ask you as a makeup artist that why do you charge this certain amount, you just don't say, if you don't pay, just be going. Do you understand? That is a very ghetto way of actually doing business. You're just trying to guilt-trip people into patronizing you. But then, if you actually have parameters that you have measured, parameters like experience, parameters like the quality of product you use for your makeup, you would actually discover that you can better propose or give a proposal of a business to a client. Do you understand? That is, as a prospective client that wants a makeup done, you can actually tell me that based off of 10 years experience and serving over 300 clients within this period of time, we have been able to grow ourselves to a point where we deliver a certain standard of service that you can't find anywhere. So this is why you should pay me. I hope you know I'll be more compelled to pay you. If as a makeup artist, you're able to tell a client that wants a discount that no, based off of our experience and the quality of products that we use, that we would actually want to be paid a certain amount and we cannot take below that particular amount. Do you understand? So if you understand this, you will discover that you have solved so much of your problems as a creative. So now, what is the first thing that you should do as a business person? As a creative that wants to be a business person, the first thing you should do is identify the parameters or the data that you actually use to measure your worth or your value as a creative person or as a creator. Did we get that? What did I say?
Identify the data you use to measure your value as a creator.
So identify the data that you are actually going to use to measure your value and your worth as a creator. If you can do this, you are ready to be a business owner. Do you understand? So as a photographer, you're not just saying, come and pay me, I can take you fine picture. That is not what you're doing. You're actually measuring the number of years that you have actually spent learning this particular craft. You are calculating the number of years that you have actually put into learning this particular craft. You are calculating the amount you paid to gain the knowledge. That is, if you went for 5 master classes, if you went for 2 beginner classes. As a creative or as a photographer, one of the things that you should actually do if you want to go into business is to first ask yourself, how long did I spend to learn this particular craft? So what is the number of years that I actually spent to learn this particular craft? What are the years of experience that I have in this particular craft? What amount did I actually pay to gain the knowledge? So if you paid for 5 master classes and you paid for 2 beginner classes, so how much did that cost me? If you have equipment, how much did this equipment actually cost me? And you are also looking at the future and calculating, if I want to stay relevant in this particular field, what would it cost me to continue learning and gaining knowledge in this particular field? So if you can actually do that, then you know that you are ready for business. You know you are actually ready to turn your passion into profits. Have we gotten that down? So basically, if we want to go through all of the creative fields, that is being a graphics designer, it's the same pattern that actually works. It is the same pattern that you actually have to follow in any field of the creative industry. So after actually defining these parameters and making it measurable, you will then understand and you will then know the amount, that is the monetary value that you are now placing on that passion that you have. Remember, you already identified your values from your, like the value that you give from your passion. Now what you're doing is that you're now attaching a monetary compensation to that particular value that you identified from your passion. Do you get what I'm saying? So if you're able to do this, you will discover that now you're not just setting the price for your service at a particular amount because you feel like. You are actually doing it based off of data that you have actually compiled together. So if you compile all of this data, you then know that, okay, I'm meant to charge per shoot. So basically, as a creative, if you actually understand this, then you know that you're not just setting the monetary compensation for your value at a particular amount just because you feel like, but then you're actually doing it because you have actually calculated based on measurable parameters that this is what your market research to know what the value that is placed on this particular skill or talent or passion of mine is. So you discover that you solve like a lot of your problems. This will eliminate the problem of creatives actually pricing themselves at a point where they are not actually up to, or pricing themselves lower than they are. So if you can actually do this, one of the things that you solved for yourself is that you have actually solved the problem of underpricing and overpricing yourself. So you then know the particular what. Now after you have now defined the particular what, now there's a system for you to actually turn this passion into profit. You have to now devise systems and schemes that will actually put these products in front of the people that want these products. That is, these products, this particular value that you have actually identified from your passion, you are now actually going to look for a way or devise a scheme to put this value. Remember, our passion is actually solving a problem, which makes it a value. You are now actually going to find the people who need this problem solved and then put this value in front of them so that they now compensate you for that. So how do you do that? One of the key ways to do that is through marketing. And that is one of the very important and one of the key components of business, marketing. You actually have to understand how to put this value in front of the people who need it. That is, you actually have to look for these people that need this problem solved, and then you have to put this value in front of them and make them understand the need for them to pay for this particular product or this particular service. Do you understand? So if you can do this, you will discover that you have solved the problem of creatives wondering why people are not actually coming to them. A businessman understands that people don't just come to you. You position yourself for people to actually see you. Do you understand? And how do you position yourself? It is in marketing, advertising, in market research, in understanding your audience, in knowing your competitors, in identifying the best possible way to solve a problem. I hope you know you can fully identify a particular problem and solve that particular problem, but then you are solving that problem but not making profit out of it because you're not using the most cost-efficient method to solve that problem. How many people have seen that kind of a thing? You are a photographer and you are shooting a person that actually needs your service, and the person is getting value from you and the person is actually paying for that value, but then you will discover that the person is not even paying what you, or you're not getting profit out of that. Did you actually get compensation? Yes, you did. But did you get profitable compensation? No. Same thing with makeup. You can actually do a makeup and you then, everything you get from that particular makeup is spent on the job. If you can understand that, looking for the best and the most efficient way to solve a particular problem would be what would separate you from the person that is actually not making profits. That would be the difference between you that you're making profit and the person that is actually not making profit off of what they do. So what's the first thing I said? Marketing. Under marketing, I said, first of all, I said understanding your audience. What else did I say? I said, you said? You have to know your competitors. You have to understand the market. Yes?
Position yourself for people that needs to see you.
Yes, one.
Knowing your competitors.
Knowing your competitors. Understanding the market environment. What else did I say? Understanding your competitors.
Best way to solve the problem. The most effective way to solve the problem.
The most effective way to solve the problem. Do you understand? So if you can fully identify all of this, and these are just a few. Advertising. Understanding that as a business owner, you're not waiting for people to come to you. You are positioning yourself for people to see the value that they need from you. That is advertising. Because some creatives and some business owners actually feel like people should actually patronize me because I have value. But who said so? Who said people would actually patronize you because you have value? In fact, you might have value and then there might be somebody that is there with a problem, but the person might not just see you. You may not just be visible to that person. What you need to do is to position yourself through advertising. Now we have digital marketing, advertising, and different other means through which you can actually put yourself or position yourself in a way to be seen by people who need this problem solved. Do you understand my point? These are some of the things that you actually have to understand as a business owner. That if I don't do all of this, there is no way I'm going to have a profitable business. How about understanding your customers? You also have to understand your customers. You have to understand the people that want this problem solved. I hope you know I might have a problem, but your system of solving my problem may not be what I want for myself. How many of you have seen that kind of a thing? Where you actually want a photographer, but you don't want a type of photographer. You want a makeup artist, but you don't want a kind of makeup. Do you understand? You want a design, but you don't want a kind of graphics design or a kind of graphics design. You have to bring yourself to that point where you're telling yourself that I have to actually understand my customers, to know what their needs are, not just to know what their needs, to know the most cost-efficient way of solving their problems. You understand? And then to understand how they want their problems to be solved. If you understand all of these things, you will then discover that you have now put yourself in a place to turn your passion into profit. It is not in the feeling, I just feel like I want to do business. I just feel like I want to charge a certain amount. I just feel like I want to do this. Feelings don't actually run businesses. Systems and structures do. So if you actually set up systems and structures that will run your business, you'll discover that you'll be more profitable. The creator that is just waiting and hoping, faith in it. You are having faith in God that your business will grow, but then you don't understand your customers. I hope you know the huge misconception in the creative industry that somebody else is after your clients is because of a misunderstanding of these things that we're discussing. Because if you actually understand it, you will know that everybody can solve a problem, but not everybody will solve a problem the same way. Do you understand? So the way I will solve my own problem as a photographer is not the way Mr. will solve his own problem, or will solve that same problem as a photographer also. You discover that we have different approaches towards it. That's why you discover that a bride can book 3 different photographers for her wedding. And it's not because she thinks less of any of them. She just wants the different values that they have to offer. Have you seen it before? So if you can understand this, you will know that the misconception in the creative industry where you feel like everybody's after your client. In fact, I've heard people say it, everybody wants the clients that you want. I don't subscribe to it. Because you can't solve a problem the way I will solve it. Do you understand? Because that's where originality comes in. That is where you pour in yourself as a person. I hope you know no 2 persons can do the same thing the same way. There will be a slight disparity, and it is in that difference that is where you now find originality. That's where you will now find your own unique voice as a business owner. You are now positioning yourself, you are now telling yourself that this particular problem that is to be solved, I have a unique way to solve this problem. That's why you discover that some people, they've been in this business for a very long time, the creative industry. They've been there for a long time, and you discover that their method of solving the problem has proved to be very authentic through the years. You will discover that even if somebody wants to copy what you do, they can't copy it exactly like you do it. So if you actually understand this, for your business to succeed, it is not a race against the others. It is a race that you are running just by yourself and competing against the previous version of yourself. That is, you are getting better and competing with who you were yesterday. Do you get? So if you're able to do this, you can fully turn your passion into profit. There is no way for you to actually turn your passion into profit except this. And this is just a part of it. Do you understand? The world of business is a huge scope of study that you actually have to do. And guess what? You have to continue learning. I don't think there's any businessman that says, I've fully learned business. You can learn business to a certain level, but you cannot say you fully learned business, because as you continue in the school, you keep increasing or you keep going higher in classes. You understand? But then the truth about it is that you never come to a point of completion. You never come to a point where you are handed a certificate of completion that you are done with business. You have graduated business. Because trust me, business will always continue to surprise you. So what worked today may not work tomorrow. Do you understand my point? So if you understand this, this is how to turn your passion into profit. Just a quick recap. The first thing we spoke about is passion can actually be inherent and it can actually be grown. Then how do you turn your passion into value? You should actually look for problems, possible problems, and then find a way or find the problems that that particular passion of yours actually solves. Then after doing that, you should then identify who you are as a person and where you are going to, and the problems that you can actually solve, which is in line with that passion that you have, which now makes it potential value points for you. And then in turning it into a business, you first have to identify that being a creator and a business person is not the same thing. They are two very different things. You have to understand that for you to actually make it as a business, you have to operate not based on feelings, but based off of measurable data, based off of measurable parameters. Do you understand? And then we moved on to talking about how to position yourself to make profit, which is marketing. And under marketing, there were several things that we said. You understand? Like understanding your customers. What else?
Placing yourself in a position.
Yes, placing yourself in a visible position through advertising. Understanding your competitors, understanding your market research, all of those things. So if you do all of these things, you discover that you have fully turned your passion from just being a passion to value, and then from value into profits by turning your value into a business. Thank you so much for staying till the end of this video. So if you would like to be a part of Belac Academy, so there's a link in the description down below. So click on that link to register for Belac Academy. And if you would also like to support us, please like this video, share, and subscribe. You can also turn on the notification bell so you get notified the next time we drop a video. Thank you so much, and we'll see you in the next one.